Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. I am your host, Chris Swick, and on this podcast, we talk about mental health, addictions, eating disorders, and really anything anyone's afraid to talk about, we talk about it on this show. I believe everyone's story is valuable at the end of the day. Does not matter what walk of life you come from. You're all welcome on my platform. Before we get started, though, head over to that YouTube channel, From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications. You can see all video formats for each episode, or head over to Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your shows, and follow the show along there. And you can hit me up over on Instagram at Depths of Darkside. But with no further ado, I'd love to introduce to you my next guest. I got from the Kingston area of Ontario, Canada. I got the first and only full amputee firefighter in Canada here. I got Michael Laughlin. You want to take it away and let them know a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I have Mike Laughlin from Kingston, born and raised. I've been through what I call is three major events in my life that shaped what I am today. And the last one being a major accident where I lost my leg. And that's where you introduced me as Canada's first and only above knee full-time firefighter. Yeah, I'm going to get into what got me here. And
I like to start off the show a lot of time about mental health and stuff. What does mental health mean to you, Mike?
so everything I've been through, obviously, a lot of it was physical, but being injured like I was, and then I had some addiction, and my girlfriend committed suicide. We'll talk about that. I've been through the ringer mental health wise, and was able to still function and still do everything that I do today. But there were some dark times. So mental health to me, it means staying healthy and being able to function in the world. And a lot of the time it's not possible for people because they just can't get past that mental block, right?
And what do you do when you're having one of those dark days? Do you have some people to lean back on or to let you spew out your verbiage and stuff like that? If you just have some stuff you want to get off your chest, do you have people that support you doing that these days?
Oh, for sure. So I have a couple close friends that I can talk about anything with, right? So I'll give them a ring. And one of them, Jarrett Robertson, he's a motivational speaking fella. So can't find a better guy to talk to when you're down. He'll lift you right up. But yeah, you got to lean on people. You have to, if you sit there and dwell by yourself, it's hard. But if you have a support system in place, there's people that'll help you get into that. Yeah, I do that. And then I also use physical fitness as an out for me. So if I'm having a tough day, go and work out and just forget and try to clear your mind.
And it must be hard too. And you have a child with Down syndrome, so that probably comes with its challenges as well. Follow Mike on Instagram, man. And what's your Instagram handle so everyone can go follow you too if they'd like to, man?
At Firefighter Amp. So at Firefighter Amp. And yeah, I post a lot about myself and my disability, but I also post my family, right? So you'll see Kiana on there, 12-year-old with Down syndrome, but she is the light of everyone's life when she walked in the room, right? But yeah, and then there's just tough moments too, is which everyone has. But yeah, it's definitely, I took on a lot when I met Angela, and we'll get into that too. She had Kiana already, right? So this is my stepdaughter, and taking on a special needs child, I didn't even think of it as a chore or anything, but which it's still not, but it is a big undertaking. And just, and that is rewarding as well because she is just so fun to be around and such a good kid.
And they mean the world to everyone. I have a cousin who was a Canadian champ in boxing, and she now teaches special needs boxing predominantly to kids with Down syndrome, and it's just
Wow.
amazing to see what they do. She's created a not for profit and given back to the community, just bringing all these kids together and giving them a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly, my wife always says special. They've got an extra chromosome. That's a special thing. And which it is. But they're always fun to be around. It's amazing. They always have that demeanor,
And they always, I
all the time.
find, have those, like, quick one-liners sometimes too that'll just burst your
Oh,
belly laughing.
and it's every day, and we're used to it now, but it's every day. She has a little attitude, and she's almost a teenager now too. So she's got that attitude and the one-liners. It's priceless. It's like even this morning, she just looks back at you and gives you that little bit of attitude and wiggles her butt at you and takes off to the bus, right? Just
Man,
like stuff like that, right?
that's amazing, man. Yeah, let's break right into, you've had 2 major accidents. You had one way back in the early 2000s, and then another one that you just talked about recently. What was that first one all about? I remember reading an article, and the second one was where you lost your leg and stuff.
Yeah. So the first one, so I grew up in the country, always snowmobiling, skidoing, like dirt biking, four wheeling, all that stuff, right? I was out snowmobiling with some friends out on Loughborough Lake, which is north of Kingston. and it was nighttime, and we were just heading back the last kind of rip of the night, and we're going across the lake, and it was snowing really hard. So when it's snowing really hard in the middle of the lake, you can't see anything. And I didn't want to get lost in the lake. And the guy I was with knew the area very well. So I was following him and following his tail light. And it was snowing really hard. So every once in a while, I'd lose his tail light and I'd panic and I'd speed up trying to catch up to him because I didn't want to lose him. Kept doing that. And then we are getting across the lake and I lost his tail light. I'm like, I got to catch up. I got to make sure I'm with him or I'm going to get lost out here. So I started going really fast, which is ridiculous. Couldn't see, pitch black. It's snowing. So it, like couldn't see 5 feet ahead of me. And so I was doing about 70, 80 mile an hour trying to catch up. And all of a sudden I remember seeing an island probably 20 feet from me. And I let go of the handlebars and I said, I'm dead. And the next thing I know, I sat up and went, oh my God, I'm alive. And looking around and I couldn't see my snowmobile anywhere. And I had hit the island, bounced off a tree and flew about 150 feet through the island and landed. And when I say flew through the island, I threaded the needle up through a whole bunch of trees. If I had a tree again, I'd have probably broken half.
I was just gonna ask, were you playing like pinball almost going through the island?
Yeah, no, I got lucky and I missed the rest of the trees. And so when I landed, I sat up and oh my God, I'm alive. And so I immediately looked down and my left leg was broke at the femur and it was grossly deformed. So I knew it was broken. I knew it was going on. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm going to die out here. So I reached in my pocket and I pull out my cell phone and I dial 911 and the phone dies. You know how it's when phones are really cold, the battery, it's no good, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was low as it was. So I'm like, no, shit, right? So I throw the phone down. And I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And I can't, it's perfectly quiet out there, except for it's snowing, right? And it's pitch black. I'm like, there's no one out here going to save me. I got to save myself. So being a firefighter, I could see a cottage just in the distance. And I was like, I'm going to crawl to that cottage and I'm going to light that cottage on fire. And people are going to see that burning and they're going to come out here and find me.
Was that
That
your
was
plan in your mind too?
that was my plan in my mind because I had a lighter in my pocket. So I started crawling and I remember crawling and basically feeling my leg coming apart at the femur each time I crawl. So I crawl, grab my leg and drag it, grab my leg. So I crawled for 5 minutes and then I laid down. I was just like, I just told myself, just die. Because I was in extreme amount of pain. I was in the middle of a lake, like no one's helping me. And it was just the worst situation, right? But then I thought to myself, you know what? I can't do this to my family. I can't do this to my friends. I got to keep going. So I started going again and I dragged myself inch by inch through the snow. And I remember like literally moving my body, then pulling my leg, moving my body, pulling my leg. It was just gruesome, right? And then I remember laying down again and being like, just die. You know? And then I thought to myself, and it's funny because you think stupid things sometimes. I was like, my friends are going to think I'm a wuss. They're going to think I'm a pussy. I got to keep going because I'm supposed to be this big tough guy, fighter in hockey and played football and rugby and all that stuff, right? And I'm supposed to be this big tough guy and I can't quit. So I keep going. And then all of a sudden I heard a snowmobile coming back. And so the guy had got to the other side, realized I wasn't with him and was coming back looking for me, probably thinking I ran out of gas or something. And so I could hear his snowmobile shut off. He found my skidoo, which was in 1,000 pieces all over the lake. And so he started to haul back and forth at each other until he got on above me and he goes, oh my God, what do I do? And he was white as a ghost, right? I said, you're going to drag me up on your snowmobile and I'm going to scream and kick and tell you to stop. Don't listen to me. Just do it and get me on the snowmobile. We got to get into shore. And so he grabs me, starts dragging me. I'm screaming. He stops like, oh, I told you not to stop. I said, I'm sorry. Anyways, he gets me up on the back of the snowmobile the second time and basically just across it, like you're across a horse, like on your,
Yeah.
and he drives me into shore where he had called someone to come pick me up and drive me to the hospital. In hindsight, should have called an ambulance, but I'm a firefighter. I thought I was in control. It's just a broken leg kind of thing after, right? It was a lot more serious than that. But so I get there and these guys we gotta remember, these are country boys, right? There's a jacked up truck waiting for me. This like big monster truck.
Now, how the
So
hell are we getting them up there?
right? They never thought of that. So they're trying to lift me and my leg is coming apart at the same time. And I'm screaming and I'm like, this isn't working, right? So he jumps in the truck, goes down the road, grabs a car, comes back. They put me into a car, into the hospital. And I remember being in the emergency where they pull up to the emergency and a nurse opened the door, one nurse, and looked at me and goes, oh shit. And closes the door and goes back in. And then they come out with a stretcher and 6 people. So and right then I knew, I was like, oh, maybe I'm a lot worse than I thought I was. And
It was a
so
little more
anyways,
than just
in
the
there,
femur.
yeah, I had shattered my femur, my kneecap, my tibia, fibula. And so go into the hospital, they pump you full of drugs, and then into surgery. And then the next thing I remember is I woke up and I had a big cast on my arm. And I was like, I get my leg was broken, right? But why is this cast on my arm? And they're like, your ulna was compound fracture through the skin the entire time. And I was literally using my arm to pull, do it like everything and never even noticed it because I was so focused on my leg because it hurt so bad. I never even noticed my arm was broken so badly, which is like crazy, right? So, anyways, turns out I shattered my femur. So I have a titanium femur, titanium kneecap, 33 pins and screws because I broke my tibia fibula. I've got a plate in my forearm with 8 big screws.
All
So
still to this day?
yep, it's all there. And believe it or not, it works perfect. So,
Like, the metal detectors must love you.
oh, airports are fun, but they put me back together and I had to learn how to walk all over again. Literally the first step of felt like a kid again, right? First step one day, 2 steps the next day, 3 steps the next day. So back to literally playing hockey, baseball, full-time firefighter. You wouldn't even know when I ever had an accident except for the massive scars on my legs that I have today. But what came with that accident was not just the physical part, was the mental part of being at the time thinking my career was over, everything was, I wasn't ever going to play sports again. All that stuff you're going to deal with until I got back healthy again. And then the drug addiction, which no one talks about.
Is that
So
where the opiates started with the
that's the first
painkillers?
time I'd ever taken an opiate. So was in the hospital where they were giving them to me.
And what was it like with that feeling going through your I've had opiates before. I'm clean and sober now myself, 3 years. But what was it like with that feeling the first time going through your body with the whatever you're probably on Percocets,
Yeah.
opiates,
So
everything.
So the first time I'd ever had them was them putting them into me intravenously. So I didn't know that part just made me feel no pain for a while. But then after that, I got into the hospital. I didn't know anything about it, but I was addicted to them. And so taking them basically made me function because withdrawals, like it shuts you down.
And especially off opiates, man, they are probably one of the worst withdrawals ever, man.
Worst. Yeah. So then I went on for a while with a prescription and which was fine. And then the doctor one day, things started to change in the world of opiates and was like, we can't give these to you anymore. So you don't need them anymore. And that's all she said to me. And so then I found out what withdrawals were. And so I had to get some legally. And that's when I went and got some help. I was like, I can't do this. I'm a full time firefighter. I'm well known. I can't, I wasn't using them to get high. I was using them to function. That's what happens when you have an
It's like any
addict.
addict though like that. You need whatever you're taking if you're on it for so long, it's just to help you function. That's the way it was with me with my
Absolutely.
cocaine addiction at the end of the day, like, I could only function if I had it every day.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, and people don't understand that unless you go through that. So anyways, I got some help and went to a clinic, which was hard for me too, because being a public figure as a firefighter and athlete and everything, you don't want to be seen at a methadone clinic, right? So I actually went out of town to do that and I
What
got
was
off
it like
everything.
swallowing your pride having to do that? Because 'Cause you're like you probably like you said, you have those thoughts when you're through your head. I don't want what are people gonna think of me because 'cause I'm going to a methadone clinic and this and that.
100%. That was completely what I was going through. And I was like, they're going to think I'm an addict. They're going to think I'm a loser. They're going to think I'm whatever. So, anyways, went out of town and got help and worked the system very seriously to get off of it all. And I did. So that was the first big event in my life. And that, like as the physical part was easy for me because I'm very competitive and there was an end goal for me. I was like, I'm getting back to where I was. So I worked my butt off in the gym. Like I trained, that was easy for me. But the mental part and the addiction part was the hard part, right? And that's the part people don't see, right? They see the physical stuff. They don't see what's going on inside. So that was event number one for me. And then what happened in between the two accidents was something completely different because it wasn't physical. So that was 2007, the first accident. 2011, I had met a girl I went to high school with actually, and she was back in town and she had been through a lot in her life, drug addiction and some abuse and stuff. And she was clean and sober when I met her. I met her at the gym. And so we got together and we've been together for 4 years dating, lived together. We opened a yoga studio together, Life Yoga, and life was good. And to make a long story short, I came home one morning and she was on the couch and I was in the kitchen. I'm talking to her. I'm saying, hey, what are you doing over there? You're napping in the morning. You're tired this morning. Kind of just small talk, right? And she wasn't answering. So then I walk over and I was like, oh my God, she's dead. So she had committed suicide. when I was out. And so that to add insult to injury,
How
I
did
was
that
out.
change your life at that point?
I completely lost control, basically. I called 911, but like I knew there was nothing I could do. She'd been gone for too long. I didn't even,
Yeah.
there was no point in doing CPR. And obviously, when the first responders got there, they found that too, but they tried for a bit. But it changed my life. Well, there's a lot of details that go in with this, but she did it. So it was my birthday. She made me go out with my friends and she didn't want to come. And she was adamant I went out. And she was like, no, I don't want to come. You go have fun. And now I realized what she was doing. She was setting me up to get me out of the house because we were always together.
And did you
Uh,
see those red flags at that point? I'm not trying to dig deep and create more like, bring back
no, it's
PTSD
okay. You
and
can see
stuff,
what it,
but did you see these red flags at the point on your birthday, or were you just thinking maybe, "Hey, she just wants some time alone," sort of thing, or
absolutely. And she had talked to her mother just before she did it. And she saw no red flags at all. Like we obviously all knew that she had a past and she was still working on that stuff.
and we
But
all have demons as well,
yeah,
and we all have demons. I don't care what anyone says. We all have demons to this day still. It's a matter of how you deal with them too.
absolutely. And now it makes sense. So she wanted me to the house so she could do it because we were always together. And then the other thing that I do realize now, but I didn't at the time because I blame myself, was that's how people commit suicide. If we knew, we would never let them do it. 100% of the time, we would never let them do it. So the ones that are serious about doing it, they don't show you any signs because they want to do it. It makes sense now. But I blamed myself for a long time. And then in doing so, I got back into some opiates, ended up getting in trouble with the police, buying some from someone that was being watched. So that was another huge hit to my ego because now,
Did that put your career on the line at that point, getting busted by the
absolutely,
cops?
absolutely. But saw what I was going through. They saw the first accident, then they saw the Jen kill herself and me spiraling out of control. And they said they took that into account and they stuck up for me. My job really did stick up for me. And they said, we're going to get you some help and we're going to get back on track. And that's exactly what happened. So I went to court. Everything got thrown out. I had to get a lawyer and the whole go to court a bunch of times, which was very hard on the ego and right. Cause everyone knows it now. There's no hiding this, right? And so now he's a drug addict and he's a criminal, right? And so it was very tough, man. It was very tough. And it took a lot to get past that too. But then I always say now, I'm like, you know what? All it takes is time. Time heals everything. And in 2 weeks, someone else is going to be the big story and they're going to forget about me.
And
And that's
it's one day
exactly,
at a time
yeah.
as with whatever it is you're doing in life, it's always a one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, 5 minutes, whatever you have to do, everyone.
Break it down into in sections. Anyway, it was really tough. Went back and got more help getting off the opiates again. After getting arrested, then it was like, okay, I was out of control. Things have to be fixed. Went and fixed them again, and life was good again. So it took some time. Took a while getting over Jen. Long time before I dated. Long time before I could really do anything without thinking about her or thinking or being guilty about it. Right. So it took a long time to fix me again. And then we're saying, do you want me to keep going into 2016?
What happened, like, in between then, you know what I mean? Like, at this point, after getting over the suicide of your partner at the time, the getting back into the opiates, at that point, have you learned that triggers that you need to avoid then at that point?
Absolutely. So
What were some of
it's
them?
just stress and things that I can't control, like what people think of me and stuff like that. I don't care what people think of me. To be honest, like if you don't like me, that's fine. I don't care. But before if you didn't like me, I would feel terrible and want to fix that. Why don't you like me? Do you know what I mean? People are always going to, the thing I've
And you
accepted
can't
is,
fix people at the end of the day, you know what I mean? You can only work on your side of the street. It's all
yeah,
about action and reaction, the way I've learned in therapy and stuff like that, and I'm still learning.
yeah. And honestly, like I know it's human nature that people talk about people. So I've accepted that too. I'm like, even at the fire, I'll be like, guys, you can talk about me if you want in the kitchen. I'm going to leave now. Just stop. Like, I make jokes of it now because and I know they're not. Or whatever, maybe they are, but, but I'm comfortable with how I am and how people are and how they think. Where before I worried a lot about that. But I am in a good place now too. I don't even think about, I would never use opiates again. I've got a little boy. I've got a family.
You have too
I've
much to lose at the end of the
too
day.
much to lose, and I have no interest in it actually. I just don't it's not there anymore, which is I'm lucky. I'm lucky it's not there anymore. Because you know the feeling of always thinking, I want it or I need it or should I just do a little bit or whatever. Yeah, it's just not there anymore, which is
And I'm sure you see it with your job a lot more because I have firefighter buddies down in where I am here in the southwestern Ontario. He said he's like, "Chris, like 85 to 90% of my calls aren't even fires anymore. It's with overdoses now and stuff like that." So I'm
oh,
sure you see a
yeah.
lot of it down in Kingston, man.
It's huge in Kingston too. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's everywhere,
yeah,
but
we use Narcan every shift, every shift. And I feel like I can relate to these people now. And I feel like, that I can give them, not at the time, but I can give them hope if they only knew where I had been. And maybe I could talk to them at some point. If I do recognize a lot of these people around town. So there's a
and I do
chance.
have and it's nice that you have that empathy and you have that but you have that firsthand knowledge. You've been there where they've been too, which is nice that you can be empathetic with them.
Sure.
The thing I see a lot too is lots of these people need more help than they are getting. I'll be honest, like, I see it a lot where I live here in Guelph. Instead of letting them but we don't have the funding too. We are so underfunded in our country. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? They whatever, if they go around vandalizing 10 windows and they get let out and they do it all over again, but it's the thing, they let them back out instead of sending them to get help, but we don't have the help to give lots of these people right now.
And
It's
we're not, for
unfortunate.
some reason, we're not going in that direction. We should be seeing that and
Yep,
addressing the problem, and they're not, right? And
exactly.
I'm lucky. Like I always think I'm lucky because my family supported me the entire time. My friends supported me the entire time. I think about these people that probably some of them don't have family, maybe they don't have friends, they don't have that system. So if I could be on that street still using drugs if I didn't have what I have, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's the support system. It's just
and we're only one step away. You and I tell people all the time, like, people I'm grateful for what I have today because if it wasn't for certain people in my life supports like you were talking about,
yeah.
I wouldn't be here either. I'd be dead in a ditch, to be quite honest.
Yeah, me too. Me 100%. I think about that often, actually. I think about the direction I could have went in, especially like after each of these incidents I've been through, I could have spiraled out of control and been there first. But, and then, so 2016, life is good again. Okay. Normal Mike, sober Mike. And I'm out for a ride on my motorcycle. Grew up on dirt bikes, always had a motorcycle around. And so
Are we on a Harley or a crotch rocket?
a Harley. Yeah, a Harley. And cruising along North Shore Road, north of Kingston, back road. And a deer comes out of the ditch and runs into the side of me. So no, I didn't go down immediately. I got into a speed wobble and trying to get the bike back in control. I get control of the bike. I look up and there's a 90-degree turn in the road.
A hairpin, eh? Holy
Yeah.
cow.
So I haven't slowed down a bit because I was concentrating on trying to not crash. So I turn as hard as I can. And as I'm bending the corner, the back wheel touches the shoulder and the bike just shoots out from under me. So as I'm falling, I'm thinking, don't hit your head, don't hit your head. Being a firefighter, I'm like, head injuries kill you or end you. Don't hit your head. So I tried to ride it out on my butt. So I bounced off the road on my butt and slid on my butt into the ditch, into a rock. And I watched my right leg snap off at the knee,
Like, literally gone?
snap right off, hanging on by some skin.
But this is your other leg, right? The one that
Yeah, so that's the kicker is I couldn't have wrecked the leg already wrecked. I had to wreck my good leg, right? Bike comes into the ditch, hits the rock and lands on top of me. So I'm under the bike and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I did it again. I just killed myself. I can't believe I just did this again. Because I remember the feeling of the first accident and I felt that same feeling, right? And so right away I go into survival mode. I'm like, okay, if I could just make a phone call to fire dispatch, I can get, as long as they know where I am, I have a chance of surviving this. So I took the bike and I took the bike off me and looked down and I could see my leg was ripped off. My tibia and fibula were sticking out into the ground. The ball of my ankle was showing. The white, it looks like a little softball. That's what your ankle looks like when there's no skin left on it.
okay, so
And it
you're
was
the bone at this point.
at the bone. So my leg is completely mangled, like every part of it. And so I'm like, shit, right? So I take my belt off, I tourniquet my leg, I pull my phone out of my pocket. I'm like, I might have one shot at this. And instead of dialing 911, being a firefighter, I know that you dial 911, you get to a 911 operator. Then they
Yeah.
transfer you. So I phoned directly into fire dispatch. So they answer, hey, Mike, how's it going? I'm dying in a ditch. Help me. I'm on North Shore Road. So I got it. I remember I get your location out, tell them where you are. And then if you pass out or whatever, at least they're going to come and find you. I was on the phone and uh, for over almost 20 minutes with the dispatcher in fire dispatch. So she actually got an award for what she did because they're just fire dispatchers, right? They're not 911 dispatchers. So they're not like crisis management, but she stayed on there, kept me going, kept me talking the entire time. And I
Did what a
remember
dispatcher's supposed to do.
that's right. But it was to the next level because she knew me too. So I think it was very hard. So I found out later that the dispatch room was full with everybody in headquarters, like all the deputy chiefs, they were all listening to me scream and yell and saying I'm dying. And I actually thought I was dying, Chris. I thought this was it. So I was telling them, tell my family I love them. And I was doing all that stuff because I thought it was over. And meanwhile, I find out later that everybody's there. People are crying, listening to me. Like it makes me emotional to think about hurting them like this, like making them worry like this. Right. So I'm in the ditch. A car actually drove by, didn't see me. So I'm like, shit. So I took my helmet off. I threw it up on the road. I grabbed a couple of bike parts that were laying in the ditch and threw up on the road so the next person would stop. Right. And then I'm laying there screaming, somebody help me, trying to get some. I knew there was a house down the road. So the guy from the house actually came over. And when he saw me, he like turned completely white. And he's, well, what do I do? I'm like, go get me another rope so I can tie this tourniquet tighter. So I'm actually like delegating jobs while I'm dying in the ditch. It's funny to say like now, because I guess people just have it in them or they don't. But I went into firefighter mode and I was like, if I go into shock and lose control here, I'll probably die. So keep full control and pretend that I'm working on someone else.
Well, probably because of all the blood you're losing at this point.
Yeah, uh, I don't even know. I don't remember how much blood was there because I was so focused on other things. And I remember looking at my leg and then just not looking back at it, just knowing it was gone and just being like, okay, let's deal with other things right now. And I always tell people too, when I was down in the ditch, another old lady, not old lady, but another lady drove by and stopped. And she came down in the ditch and actually put her arms on me and comforting me. And at the time, it was what I needed. I needed someone to be there, like helping me. The guy that had come over for the rope, he never actually came back for a while, and because I think he was pretty shocked at what was going on.
He's probably at home like, "What the fuck did I just look at?"
Yeah, exactly. But this lady came down and didn't phase her at all, and was there comforting me until the firefighters showed up. And I remember my mom tracked down who that lady was and to thank her and she was a school teacher, not like she wasn't a paramedic, she wasn't this or that, and like the scene was gruesome and it didn't bother her at all. So I think that just shows like a lot of people will see an accident or someone that needs help and just walk by or drive by. I don't want anything to do with that. But at the time, I needed her to keep me going. Like I needed that little boost of humanity, just be like, you know, I got you. You're going to survive. Don't worry. And this lady gave that to me at that time. And just people need to know that like maybe you could be that person for someone. Because I know this day and age, people just drive by. I don't want anything to do with people. Someone else's job or someone else's worry.
It's crazy to see how many people just walk on by, or if someone's having whether it's an accident, a mental health episode, like people just don't even ask just to, even if you're just to stay there with them, you don't even have to say anything. Just be there with them to comfort them.
Yeah, but this day and age, people just walk by. It's terrible. So anyways,
Crazy.
this lady was a big help. And then I remember the firefighters showing up, and I actually knew the first firefighter on scene. So he actually had some PTSD from that accident because he knew me. And I was so screwed up and I was yelling his name and stuff. And I guess it messed him up a little bit. He didn't actually feel better until he came in and saw me alive and well in the hospital about a month later. But he was instrumental in the whole situation too. So I remember them packaging me up. I remember the whole ride into the hospital and they're pumping me with painkillers and they're not working, right? And they're wondering why. And they keep phoning the doctor saying, can we give them more? And then they maxed out what they could give me. But meanwhile, like I wasn't on them at the time, but my tolerance was through the roof for
Well,
these
because
things,
of
right?
all your previous experiences
Because of
with
my
them.
previous, but they didn't know that, right? So unfortunately, they couldn't do much for me the whole ride in, which was, pure torture the whole way. And then I remember getting in the hospital and they going through all the scans and everything. And I remember the one doctor just came up and goes, listen, there's no more we can do for you pain wise. You're broken. We're going to put you in a coma. And I remember saying, yes, please put me in a coma. I remember begging for it because
Just to
I'd
get
been
rid of that pain at that point.
2 hours of this, right? Where
Yeah.
my leg was ripped off for crying out loud, right? It's like the most pain you could probably be in. I don't know. But they put me in a coma. So I was in a coma for 8 days. And during that time, they reassembled my body. So at the time I thought I had just ripped my leg off and broke my leg. I woke up with a collar on my neck and was told I couldn't move. I was like, okay, I get it. Like what I do to my neck or whatever. They said, well, you've got two fractures in your neck and you broke your back in 3 spots. So we've put two 12-inch rods in your back with 10 big screws into your spine. And I'm like, what? Like I didn't know I broke my back. I didn't know any of this because I
There's
was
all the
moving.
pains in your leg from being it ripped off.
Yeah. And I'd been moving around and doing I could have paralyzed myself probably. I don't know. But like I didn't know. I find that crazy, but your adrenaline takes over and carries you, right? And so, yeah, they're started my recovery of, I was a month and a half in the hospital. Now, I think I was supposed to be more like 3 months in the hospital, but I shortened that because I worked my butt off to get out. But the first month, I literally laid there because I couldn't move because of my back was healing. My leg was in like a halo. And so actually the first 3 days was the toughest part because my leg was on, but it was killing me. So my leg had turned gray. It wasn't living. They tried to reattach it.
Oh, they tried to reattach your leg?
Yeah, so they
Oh,
did.
okay.
When I woke up out of a coma, my leg was reattached and it was in this big halo.
Yeah.
But over the next 3 days, it just didn't.
It didn't take on?
No, so it was dying. And when that happens, like when you hurt something on your body sends all its energy to try to heal that, right? It was sucking the life out of me. I was very sick and very weak. And so I remember the doctor when he came in, he's okay, yeah, we're gonna have to amputate. And in the back of my mind, I knew that, but the whole time, but still until you hear that, it's like then it hits home, right? And so I grieved for I would say I only grieved for an hour. So I cried with my family. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, screw this.
Let's fucking do it, eh?
Yeah, I was like, Dad, grab the iPad, look up what's the best leg you can get in the world. And that's literally an hour after they told me they were amputating. And
You're
so,
already on it. I want the best, eh?
yeah, and he found it and it literally is the leg I'm wearing right now is the Autobot X3.
I
And
always hear you talk about it on your, Instagram and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So it's supposed to be the most durable, right? Now I'm pretty hard on stuff, so I can still break it. Actually, I have a loaner right now, but it's a very durable leg and it's a computerized leg.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you if it's, like, bionic or whatever.
Yeah, so it helps with the swing of your leg and in your walk, and it stabilizes you a bit better. And you've got to charge it every 5 days. Like
Now do you think you'd be able to do your job without this leg?
I do now, yeah,
Yeah.
but I learned on a computerized leg, and I think it's much easier to learn on a computerized leg than it is the mechanical.
And
So
now these
I
things
do
aren't cheap either.
no, like the leg I'm wearing, the whole outfit's about $120,000.
Gee.
Thank goodness for insurance. And I have two of these, so I have two exact same legs.
Yeah.
Oh, and one sits in my fire boot.
Okay, so you leave
So
one at work and one for home?
yeah, but so I'll be wearing this one around the station. When we get a call, I pull the pin out, step out of this leg, and step into the other leg that's already in my fire boot.
It's almost like
So
RoboCop.
oh yeah, my kids call it my robo leg. So anyway, so I spent a month in the hospital laying there healing, and then I went to St. Mary's, which is a rehabilitation hospital, and learned how to my new life without a leg. And then that's where I met my prosthetician, Marty Robinson, who makes my legs. And we put a game plan together. And then he told me what I basically had to do to start wearing a leg. So if it was like, you got to do 2 leg raises today, I would do 50. So anything they told me to do, I would times 100 and crush it. Right. That's just my mentality. So I ended up getting into the hospital way earlier because I was way ahead of the process. And then the same came to when I got the leg. It was like, okay, so wear the leg for an hour and then take a break and then go back at it maybe 5 hours later. I put it on the first day and didn't take off for like 12 hours. And I was learning how to do everything.
Did you
And so that
overdo
was,
it though?
you could overdo it, but I never did overdo it really.
Oh,
I never hurt myself or anything. But yeah, so Marty, yeah, like I've never had someone as determined as you. So you're hard to keep up with. So I was at the point where I was ready to start training to get back to work. So with that, when I was being wheeled in out of the ambulance, my chief, deputies, and a whole bunch of firefighters were waiting there at the hospital. And I remember my chief leaning over, and this is when I was completely broken, getting out of the ambulance on the stretcher. And he said, listen, Mike, just get better. Your job's here waiting for you. And that's what I needed to hear. That was the best words I've ever heard.
you didn't have to worry about anything at that point because probably going in, you're like, all right, I've lost my job now this time and stuff like
These are
that.
things that go through your head, believe it or not, while you're in the ditch.
Oh, I bet.
It's not like there's a lot that was going through my head. And it was like, I just ended my life. I just ruined any chance of doing basically anything. And for him to say that, it motivated me. And that's why part of the reason I got out of the hospital so quick and I got back so quick. So then the next thing was I had to pass the physical to keep my job, basically. He's like, if you can still do the physical test that is required to get the job with that leg, then you can keep your job.
You're
Because there's
just
a
as
lot.
good as an able-bodied firefighter then at that point.
That's right. And there was a lot of pressure on him too, because no one had ever done this before. So if he's the chief that lets me come back and something happens,
His ass
then
is on the line.
that's right. So for him to step up like he did is amazing. And then he set the standard. If you can still do it, you can still do it. So I actually trained for the test. My My fellow firefighters on my crew helped me prepare for it, crushed the test. I had times that were faster than two-legged guys, right? So in some of the drill, which I was pretty proud of. So that was no problem at all. And back to work I went. So I became the first firefighter in Canada with above knee amputation. Now in the US at the same time, there was a firefighter that did the same thing on a motorcycle, lost his leg, and he about 2 months earlier. So I always say it's only because he didn't break his back and neck. So he's a wuss, but he just lost his leg. But he got back to work just ahead of me about 2 months earlier.
Didn't
And
you guys become friends if from
and we
what I was
became
reading?
friends and we had been talking and stuff on how to basically just tips and stuff. So yeah, so there's two of us. And then since then there's been three more, one in Sweden that we helped. So there's five of us in the world basically that do what we do with an amputation. An above knee
All
amputation.
firefighters too, right?
All firefighters, yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
that's the thing is we're above knee amputated firefighters. It's a game changer. So if you're a below knee amputation, it's a completely different game because you've got a knee and your knee plays a huge part of
With your
kneeling down,
mobility.
standing up, mobility. Like you don't know how important it is until it's gone. But so for us to be back with no knee is huge. That's the difference. And then, so after this last accident, 2016, I remember getting out of the hospital and there's a lot that goes through mentally for that too, right? You're now an amputee. Your life has changed. Life every day is hard for me. There's frustration every day. And things aren't easy because I want to do everything I used to do, right? I'm not going to sit around and feel sorry for myself and be handicapped, right? I just don't think of that. And my coworkers, like the other day at the table, the one guy's, oh yeah, you don't have a leg. I forgot about that. And I don't even think about it anymore. And then they go and went around the table and all the guys are like, yeah, I never think about you either as being an amputee. Like they're just so used to me and I do everything, right? It meant the world to me to hear that. But so where was I? I was talking about basically just getting back and getting back to work. And then so the mental part of it was a bit of a struggle too, just being an amputee. Just I look weird. I got a stump. It's just it took me down a bad road, but I was able because of my past experiences to not go into eating opiates or drinking or any of that stuff.
What was some of the things that helped you overcome that adversity then at that point? I'm gonna get back to work. What were some things, if someone else is out there listening, that would help them get through that adversity?
Some people are just born with it. I played sports my whole child at a high level, and it's that competitiveness. So no one's ever done this before. Well, I'm going to do it, and that was a big part of it for me. Was just like I've now got a goal. I've now got a purpose. It's to get back to work as an amputee. But you wake up days where you just don't want to do it, and you just feel like you're useless, and then you don't want to put your leg on, and you've got to have a purpose, right? You've got to have a reason to do it. And so now, and Chris, I'm going to tell the last part of my story, which is like the kicker is I was in the hospital for a long time and the days are long in there. So I was wheeling around in my wheelchair. And at the time I was about 160 pounds. I had long hair, I had a beard. I got these Boxer Joe like pajama bottoms on and I'm in my wheelchair and and I'm wearing a neck brace and I'm wheeling around just bored. And I'm going down the different wings of the hospital and I find myself in palliative care. And so I'm wheeling by and I saw a name that I knew, and I knew that the mother had been there. So I was wheeling down the hall and I go by this one room and I see this nurse bent over helping a patient. And I jam on the brake on the wheelchair and it squeals and I get caught. But the reason I'd stop is I was looking at this butt. I'm like, look at that butt. That is wow. And I can throw the brakes on, I get caught, right? So then I just wheel in. I'm like, I got lucky. It was actually the person I knew. So we start small chat. And this nurse is beautiful. Most stunningly beautiful woman I've ever seen. And so but I'm looking like Joe Dirt, right? In a chair with no leg. And so I'm not thinking anything of it. And we chat and this small talk or whatever. And then I leave. And when I went back, I looked up on Facebook and just said, nice to meet you kind of thing. And she said something, nice to meet you. And that was it. I'm like, wow, that nurse was hot. Anyways, that was it. And 6 months go by and I'm looking more like I do now. I'm in shape. I'm on my leg, doing my thing. And we started chatting and went on a date. And I remember on that first date, and this is what not to do on a date, Chris. I remember on the first date, I told her I was going to marry her.
You don't do that, guys.
That is the worst thing you could do. So she basically chalked me down as crazy. And the date went well, but she chalked me down as crazy. And we didn't talk for a while. And then I guess she had
I
thought
wonder
about it.
why.
Yeah, but I was I've never had that feeling before. I was overwhelmed with this is the one. I don't know how to explain it. I never, because I'd never felt that before.
Yeah.
And I was a bit of a player, right? So I'd been with, been around and dated a lot of girls and I'd never had that feeling before. And to say it on the first day, anyways, didn't talk to me for a bit. And then I guess she thought about it and was like, maybe there's something there or whatever. And she got a hold of me. And then to make a long story short, Chris, we're married for 4 years now. And we have a 2.5 year old little boy and I Kiana. And so that nurse that I was wheeling around the hospital and checking out her butt and got caught, I married. And there you go. So the best thing in my life came from the worst thing. And
It's funny how that happens, eh?
yeah, it's nuts. And so everything I went through, I'm a big believer, obviously, and it all happens for a reason, but everything I went through led me to meeting her, right? And then saying a stupid thing on a date. Like all those things added up to where I am now. And I couldn't be happier. Like I am at the best part of my life right now. I love my family. I love my wife, but it's just couldn't be better, Chris. And I've been through the ringer, man. I've been through the ringer to get here. And so everything I went through was worth it. All the pain, all that anger, all the addiction, everything I went through got me to here. Well, it was damn worth it. So
I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day today, man. That is just fuck. It's an amazing story, man. I'm mind blown that the things that Mike has been through, folks, and to still be here after two major accidents, not just one, but two major accidents, losing his partner to, and then to find his wife rolling around the hospital looking like Joe Dirt. What a way to end it.
yeah, yeah.
Can't get any better
Honestly,
than that.
if
You can't
anybody,
make this shit up, folks.
you can't. And if you get anything from this whole thing, is never give up. Never give up. If I had given up at the first accident, or if I had given up after Jen died, or I lose my leg and I break my whole self, and if I had given up there, I wouldn't be where I am today. So there's always the chance. If you think you're in the worst situation, or you're depressed and you're on drugs and you don't think you can get off it and you don't think you can help, you can do it. I'm a perfect example because I just never gave up. I just kept scratching away, kept working at it. And now I couldn't be in a better spot. And if you ever, I'm available to reach out to. Like I said, at Firefighter Amp on Instagram is the best place to get me, or Michael D. Laughlin on Facebook. But you can reach out to me if you need just help getting past that one little hurdle or just want some motivation. There's guys like us, Chris, that they can reach out to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's so true. Anyone that's just feeling down, out, or needs to get some shit off their chest, it doesn't hurt just to reach out to a neutral source. Sometimes people like myself, I'm sometimes afraid to share it with the people closest to me because I'm going to
Absolutely.
wonder if I'm going to be a burden to them. You can always share it with a neutral source. That's why I still go to therapy today, just to get shit off my chest to help me
Yeah, man.
through the tough days. There's nothing wrong with therapy, folks.
There's nothing wrong with asking for help. And it used to be a problem for me because I was always this tough guy, right? Didn't want to get help because I don't need it because I'm tough. Once I dropped that and realize that it's okay, it's such a relief to get things off your chest. So don't hesitate to reach out to anybody at any time. And there's always a chance, just never give up.
And if don't believe any of this story and this guy surviving two major accidents, just go look up Michael Laughlin, Kingston, and you'll find the articles.
Yeah,
I had to dig through it just to figure out what he'd gone through. I wanted to know before I had reached out to this guy and stuff
absolutely. Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But I was like, all right, what? There's a reason he is an amputee and all this stuff. So and I was like mind blown reading the articles.
Yeah. That's like I said, it was a tough go for a while, but like it was all worth it to get to where I am now and a lot of work. But I think I'm better for it too. I'm a better person, more aware, and I have all the tools to deal with things now. And so just never give up. There's always a chance for you to recover from where you are.
Like I said, thanks again. And if there's one thing that I could take away from today's show, like you just said, never give up, everyone. If you're going down and out, make sure you have that support system. Not everyone does get the right to have that support system. Some people don't. So be grateful for what you have in your life today. Thanks again, Mike, for coming on the show. I truly appreciate you taking the time. And everyone, go check them out at Firefighter Amp over on Instagram.
Thanks, Chris.